really stood out to you last night in the Super Bowl? And your thoughts to Tom Brady. Is Tom Brady the greatest quarterback to ever play the game?
So starting off, like, what stood out to me, honestly, it was Tampa Bay's front four. I thought they were fantastic. They mainly played cover 2 the entire night. They kept everything in front of them. They weren't going to let Tyreek Hill and Sammy Watkins and Mecole Hardman beat them deep. They will take those little dump routes to Kelsey. That's why Kelsey's numbers looked great, because that's all Tampa Bay's defense was giving them. They're keeping everything in front. That front four for Tampa Bay was out of this world. I mean, Sue was in the backfield all night. Shaquille Barrett was in the backfield all night. Honestly, Devin White was my MVP. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was all over the football field. 12 tackles. I mean, 2 for loss. Had an INT in the end zone to help keep them not letting them get a touchdown towards the end. I thought it was fantastic defense. I mean, yes, Tom Brady played good football. He played very safe. I mean, yeah, he took a couple deep shots towards the end near the half. Got the huge PI, which it didn't really look like PI to me. It looked like he was tripping and his hand just caught Mike Evans' foot, but I digress. I thought that Tampa Bay's defense just won the game. I thought it was kind of equivalent to the Seahawks-Broncos Super Bowl a couple years ago, where anything that Peyton Manning tried to do with that offense wasn't going to work against the Legion of Boom. Tom Brady is the most accomplished quarterback of all time. I don't think he's the greatest quarterback or most athletic, but I feel like I can't argue he's got 7 rings. He's the most accomplished quarterback of all time. And I agree. I don't think he's the greatest player of all time. I would have to say, when you were talking earlier, Jerry Rice, yeah, he's got numbers that'll never be broken. If you're talking athletes, Deion Sanders, I don't know how you leave him off. Yep. Obviously, I'm not old enough to watch Jim Brown play, but everything I've heard from Jim Brown is he was the greatest player of all time. But, I mean, yeah, you can't argue with the fact that Tom Brady has 7 rings and he's been to 10 Super Bowls, and he is, I got to say, he's the GOAT of quarterbacks, I would say. I never got to see Joe Montana play in his prime, so it's hard to argue with that. I just think at the end of the day, Tampa Bay's defense, you could have played that game in Kansas City. You could have played on a neutral site. You could have played on the moon. It did not matter. Tampa Bay's defense was not going to lose that game.
A big deal was the fact that both tackles were out for Kansas City. We thought Mitchell Schwartz might have had a shot to come back. It looked like it was headed that way. Then last second, they said he was out as well, still having issues on the COVID-19 list. And Fisher, as we know, tore his Achilles. So being the margin of victory and the way Tampa's defense played the way they did, how much do you think it would have made a difference if either one or both of them was still playing? Would it have been a Kansas City win? Would it have been still a close game? Or do you think Tampa still wins anyway?
I mean, from what I saw last night, I think it's kind of hard to argue that Tampa Bay wouldn't have won that game either way. I mean, so if you watch that game and everyone's giving Patrick Mahomes a lot of flack today, because like, oh, he was awful, he was horrible. No, he was running for his life the entire game. Before he even took two seconds off the ball, there was Shaquille Barrett or Ndamukong Suh in his face, or JPP was there. They had 29 pressures out of 56 dropbacks. So over 50% of the time Patrick Mahomes dropped back to pass, he was under pressure. So, and the fact they only got 3 sacks out of that was phenomenal. I know they have 5 tackles for loss, but only 3 sacks out of 29 pressures. It's unheard of. It was the most in Super Bowl history. And it just seemed like no matter, even if the tackles, yes, that probably would have been limited down. But just the way that Tampa Bay's offense was clicking, they weren't making mistakes. Their offensive line played great yesterday. I believe they only had 4 pressures and they gave up 1 sack. But Tampa Bay could really do whatever they want offensively. They played really safe. I know Kansas City blitzed a lot, and Tom Brady was checking it down. Fournette was a very good weapon to have. I mean, with those check down routes. I mean, Leonard Fournette had 46 yards receiving as well to go on with the almost 90 yards rushing, and of course that touchdown that kind of sealed the game in the third quarter. You come out of halftime and you see Kansas City march down the field and only being able to get another field goal out of it. I'm like, all right, well, maybe there's still a chance. And watching Tampa Bay just go down the field again and just Leonard Fournette just going – he was a very low-key free agent signing. I know when we got released from the Jags, and he kind of got there in the end of the season, and he really started to come on late in the playoffs. They called him Playoff Lenny for a reason. Mm-hmm. So he came on strong, looked like retro LSU Leonard Fournette when he wasn't playing Alabama. He looked good. I think that Tampa Bay was going to win this game. I know they didn't have to worry about the media week, traveling. They didn't have to worry about being away from the family. They didn't have to worry about missing practices, getting out of their normal routine. It just looked like Tampa Bay was well over-prepared for this game, and it looked like Kansas City just thought they could sleepwalk into this game and just kind of do what they did last time.
I agree with you. I don't know what was going on. Early in the game, you saw that Patrick Mahomes seemed like he was so confident, a little too cocky when he stepped on the field. You could see it in his face. And then as the game progressed, and you saw him on the sidelines, you saw him his head in his hands, head between his legs. You saw the area of defeat in the third quarter. I knew that the game was over, really going, before the third quarter even started with the halftime show. And by the way, the weekend was fantastic. I don't care what anybody says about the weekend. That was a fantastic 15-minute concert that he put on. It was fantastic. He was on the roof. He was on the field. He was on a stage. He was fantastic. I don't care what anybody says. I saw so many people take shots at the weekend. It was absolutely uncalled for. The guy did everything possible. And by the way, he didn't have any guest like Shakira and Jennifer Lopez. It was just the weekend. And he put on a Michael Jackson-esque kind of concert. It was fantastic. But what I noticed in the game, and I said this to Speedy, I said this on our FM show, The Weekend Crunch, I said it, that if Tampa was going to win the game, Leonard Fournette is going to get over 100 yards, and I said that Gronkowski is going to score at least 2 touchdowns. And what happened, Speedy? I told you this, and I like to blow myself up because there's certain things that I say, and it comes true, and I like to stick it to people. But to me, Gronkowski was the player of the game. He made blocks. He was being used as another offensive tackle. When Jones was trying to blitz and he was trying to get to Tom Brady, you saw that Gronk was on the left side. He was on the right side. He was blocking. He was catching the ball. I think he had 7 or 8 catches for over 70-something yards, 2 touchdowns. Gronk did everything in the game. And by the way, Gronk didn't have a great season. Gronk, it took him a while to get his legs under him. He really did. All throughout the season, he wasn't the same player. It took a while for him to figure it out. And then as the players progressed, he was just a better player. And I was amazed. I was absolutely amazed on how Gronkowski, especially in the fourth quarter, when they started throwing the ball to Antonio Brown as the game progressed. And Evans completely disappeared. You didn't see the dynamic offense we've seen all season long with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He threw to really 3 guys, and he ran the ball with Leonard Fournette. So my question to you, my friend, when you look at Andy Reid and his play calling, and I know everybody says it's Eric Bieniemy making the play calls. Come on, give me a break. It's Andy Reid, one of the greatest offensive minds in NFL history. He's definitely making the play calls with Eric Bieniemy. Were you surprised that Andy Reid couldn't figure out this defense?
I kind of was, but at the end of the day, it's not like Andy Reid. This is a very uncharacteristic game for Andy Reid. I think you're right. I put him up there with, the Sean Paytons and the Sean McVays, the great offensive minds in the NFL right now. And my problem with it is they didn't adjust defensively. I mean, it was clear in the first quarter they're not throwing the ball deep. They are keeping it. They're doing the check downs, keeping it short, putting Gronk out into the flat. I mean, if you go there and you watch that first touchdown, play action Gronk in the flat, that's a play that they ran in New England countless times. Gronk was great. I thought Gronk was great. I thought Tyrann Mathieu on Gronkowski in the red zone was a total mismatch. Mm-hmm. If you go back to the second touchdown he had, Tyrann Mathieu had no shot. I mean, granted, that pass interference that led to it was laughably bad. Or towards the end of halftime was laughably bad. And I think everyone's going to kind of go in and blame the refs. And I kind of did at halftime yesterday. I mean, 11 penalties for 120 yards. You're not going to win that game. But again, I think Andy Reid's going to get a lot of flack. And Eric Bieniemy he's going to be a great head coach someday.
You think so?
Think he is.
I don't think he hasn't interviewed very well. He interviewed for 17 jobs. I counted 17 jobs in 3 years, and he still doesn't have a job. That to me is a little scary when you're talking about a guy that's very, highly profiled under Andy Reid. We've seen all Andy Reid's disciple offensive coordinators get jobs. The next year, Eric Bieniemy's been the offensive coordinator for almost 3 years now, and he hasn't landed a job. To me, that's something that you have to look at. In the big picture, he doesn't interview very well.
Well, think about this. Andy Reid doesn't have a lot of time left. Patrick Mahomes isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Travis Kelce isn't going anywhere soon. No one's really talking about maybe Eric Bieniemy is the next Kansas City head coach. Why would he want to leave that situation? He's not going to get a quarterback better than Patrick Mahomes. He's already established there. He knows the players. He knows the coaching staff. I mean, what job right now would be better than Kansas City?
Andy Reid is a lifer. He is a lifer. He's not leaving anytime soon.
there was rumors of Andy Reid possibly stepping down after winning the Super Bowl last year. I don't think Andy Reid has that long left. And I kind of look at it as like Josh McDaniels in New England. I think he's going to be the New England head coach when Bill Belichick calls it quits. When
the team is going to be terrible for the next 10 to 15 years when he takes over that team. Give me a break.
Yeah, very well. Yeah. I mean, but I think Eric Bieniemy is fine waiting his turn to coach Patrick Mahomes in that offense. Because like I said, I don't think there's going to be a situation better than Kansas City in the near future because there's not a quarterback in the NFL has a higher ceiling than Patrick Mahomes. So I think it's kind of a little bit of, he's taking these interviews just to see if someone's going to throw a ridiculous number at him to, and see how much power they can give him. I wouldn't go to Houston. I wouldn't go to
Cruz. They haven't even offered him a job. Nobody's even offered him a job. That's crazy. You're talking about a guy. I used to do a show with a ex-NFL player, Eric Coleman. He spoke so highly of Eric Bieniemy, because he knows Eric. He's very close with Eric Bieniemy. And to me, it's crazy to look at the big picture. Even interviewing with the New York Jets, the Jets didn't even call him up for a second interview. They called Robert Saleh up and what's his name again? The Tennessee Titans offensive coordinator, who's now the coach,
Falcons coach. Yeah,
the Atlanta Falcons coach. So to me, that's alarming again when you're looking at the big picture because you're talking about one of the best offensive-minded coaches right now as an offensive coordinator in the NFL, and nobody has offered him a contract. Nobody's offered him even a second interview.
And it's true, and you bring up good points with the second interviews and that. And like I said, we don't know what's going on behind the rooms. We don't know if he's just taking these as a formality. We don't know what he's doing. Maybe he is a bad interviewer. Maybe we don't know. Like I said, I just kind of have a feeling it's like, look, I really don't think Andy Reid's going to be coaching much longer. I give it maybe a couple more seasons, but if I'm Eric Bieniemy, I'm not going to leave the opportunity to have Patrick Mahomes as my quarterback for the future because then it's like, okay, I don't have to worry about drafting one. I don't have to worry about getting one in free agent. Patrick Mahomes is in Kansas City for the next decade, and he's got that locked down. So, I mean, that would be my only thing.
Your podcast, you do a lot of Alabama sports, and they have a national championship football team and also a very successful basketball team right now that's been in the top 10.
Speedy loves them.
For the season. So we'll start with football, and where you're taking this national championship type season. Also, from a draft perspective, can you see a lot of these first-round projected players turning out in the NFL, especially some of the big-name offensive players?
Yeah, so I do talk a lot about Alabama sports. I attended the University of Alabama as my alma mater. I'm from there. I'm from Mobile, Alabama as well. It was a great season. I thought it was coming from a season if we didn't even know we were going to have it to possibly being statistically the greatest offense in college football history to debatable a top 5 all-time team college football history. And yeah, everyone's going to be like, oh, it was a COVID year and everything like that. We blew all expectations out of the water. Our offense couldn't be stopped. Yes, this wasn't a typical Alabama defense like we're used to seeing where it's suffocating run defense and just shut down, only giving up 10 points. That's unrealistic in today's age of college football. I thought this was a great team. Not a lot of people had faith in Mac Jones going into the season. If you guys listen to my podcast or if you guys know who I am, I'm probably the biggest Mac Jones supporter out there besides his family. So I love the fact that he came in, kept his head down, didn't listen to the Bryce Young hype, which he's going to be a stud at Alabama in the future. I think his future is very bright. Devontae Smith coming back for his senior year, Najee Harris coming back for his senior year, and the one that I don't think gets enough love, Alex Leatherwood coming back for his senior year. It just was the perfect story, especially playing an all SEC schedule. We didn't play the Louisiana Techs, we didn't play the Southern Miss. We played everybody in the SEC, first team ever to do that. And then we go in, we play a national power, Notre Dame, take care of business. And in fact, I give probably Notre Dame props because their defense played us the best out of anybody we played all year. And then we go and take care of business against Ohio State, who very talented team. I didn't think they deserved to be in the playoffs. Yes, I know what they did to Clemson, but if you play 6 games when everyone else is playing 10 and 11 games, that's not really fair. That's just giving someone else an advantage in my eyes. But they still took care of business, and I think this Alabama team was special. I think it is Nick Saban's best team ever, and that's saying a lot.